Yeah, well, I mean, they hadn't gone to peace with them. So the Arab countries in recent times are making friends with Israel. That's because they see some other country. Do you guys have any idea what other country is seen as more of a threat to the Arab countries than Israel would be? And everyone said together, Iran. I already told you the answer. It's like you spike it on your own side. I mean, hello. Oh my gosh, that was terrible. Hopefully this thing is not about to fill up too. I need to delete a lot of videos off my cards. I got the answer, and I'm glad I actually saw that it was breaking at that point. Oh my gosh. Now, put this down as well, because this is going to be a key part. If the United States wants Jordan and Egypt to be friends with Israel, and therefore to be friends with the United States, what else is it going to take? Money. Yeah, well, we're going to have a treaty and so forth with Israel. The United States will, and still has, continued to bankroll, provide a lot of money to Egypt. Write that down. Money to Egypt and weapons. So beginning in the 1970s, we will become friends, but there's a cost. If you look at how much the United States provides to different countries around the world, right up in the top 10, Israel. But right up there also, Egypt. What do we get? We're the big player in the Middle East. And that's what Nixon wanted. During the Cold War, who do we want not to be participating and mucking around in the Middle East? The Soviet Union. So it's a really, really neat trick that Nixon could take countries that had been fighting against each other, Israel and Egypt and Jordan, and of course this is going to be followed through. Let's give credit to Ford and Carter and then Reagan and so forth. It's a really neat trick to be able to pull those adversaries apart and bring them together as your friends. Put this down. There is one country that will remain very tight, very close with the Soviet Union throughout the Cold War. And it's a country that still has not reached peace with Israel. Syria. Yeah, as a country. The Palestinian people have got no big, clear, defensible homeland. That's an issue that hasn't been quite solved as of yet. But Syria still doesn't recognize Israel. Syria is still very close to what had been the Soviet Union, still very close to Russia. So if you look at modern times, you're like, oh, there's a Syrian civil war and so forth. How's that been going? Oh, the Syrian government is winning. Where have they received a lot of material weapon support and so forth from? Exactly, yeah. And has the United States been ever tried to help out some of the other people on the other side? Yeah, which makes it a little bit, kind of tense and so forth. Yeah, Russia today likes to be involved and make friends and so forth in the Middle East, but, we're focused on the Cold War. During the Cold War, major achievement, you could say, by President Nixon as a result of these series of wars. All right? Okay? Anwar Sadat. Eventually, you'll see him sitting at a table, and Jimmy Carter, president, is in the middle, and on the other side is the Israeli leader, and they're making a deal. Okay? Oh, by the way, in your notes, who was the female leader of Israel during the 1973 Yom Kippur War? She led her country to victory over Egypt. Nobody got the handout in front of you? Golda Meir. Okay? Golda Meir.
Can I share a reflection I have on Israel?
Sure.
It's a little off topic. But I've always wanted to go to Israel, and my son is taking a martial arts class, and he's had some training in Israel. So I asked him if he's ever been there, and he's like, yeah, I've been to Israel. I'm like, well, what did you think of Israel? Is it safe? Right? Because it's always like, is it...
They're ready for war. Yeah.
Is it a safe place? Could I take my family there if I wanted to go? And he's like, it's incredibly difficult to get into. There are lots and lots of hoops and checkpoints.
Even before quarantine or now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he went several years ago.
Yeah.
He said it's incredibly difficult to get into, but once you're inside the country, it's the safest place you've ever felt. Safer than the United States. I said, why is that? He said, everybody in that country is carrying a machine gun.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody in that country carries a machine gun.
I can imagine.
They are all active duty military or have been
Women too.
military.
Yeah.
And because they were active duty, when they're done, they get to continue to carry their weapons. Why is this? Because if they get attacked or someone comes
They're
into
ready.
the community,
Yeah.
they take care of it.
Yeah. It's a complicated thing, I tell you what.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of security and so forth. Probably the ones that are like, well, this isn't working out very well for us, are the Palestinian Arabs that are still living in that area. And they're like, well, when are we ever going to be able to go back to our homes and so forth and so on? And unfortunately, among some of them in the past, they have conducted terrorist activities, and so the Israeli government responds by like having this, super militarized population and building walls between the Palestinian communities and the other parts of Israel. And so it really puts it's kind of like if you got into a fight with a sibling and your parents are like, let's see how we can solve this. Send you each to your rooms, okay? And build a wall in between and leave you in that room for a long period of time. Yeah, this poster right over there, the man that looks kind of like me, that was a poster my dad brought back because he was an election observer of a Palestinian election to make sure there were no shenanigans going on and so forth. And he observed no shenanigans, although one thing he did observe was like they're having elections, but they're not all excited about voting because they weren't really voting for a really truly independent state. Because Israel, because of their security concerns primarily, they're really, really hesitant to let Palestine develop a full-on state. Let me just go back to the map here. Because that full-on state would exist like right here in the West Bank, right next to Jerusalem. Would Jerusalem be part of it? Would it be split? There's controversy. So, hasn't quite been solved. It's a very, very controversial thing. But yeah, you're right. Nowadays, if you go to Israel, it's really safe. And if you want to go into the various different areas as an American, you're fine. If you're Palestinian, they're going to keep a much, much closer look at you. And you're like, what did I ever do to you? That's what they've got ramped up as far as their concerns. Okay? All right, let's turn our attention to, this isn't going to take too long, the North Yemen Civil War. This is an IB Paper 2 20th Century War. Woof. In North Yemen. We're talking about it right now because we're talking about the Middle East, and it also takes place relative in the context of this time. Okay? There is North Yemen. Okay? It is located right near Saudi Arabia. Keep an eye on Saudi Arabia. They're going to be a participant. Right across the Red Sea is Egypt. And this is during the time of Anwar Sadat. Okay? And there will be a civil war there beginning in 1962, and it will continue on until 1970. It's not very well known. In fact, before I saw it on the IB list of like wars to cover, I'm like, I don't know much about that wars. There's a lot of wars that took place in the 20th century, and this was a particularly bloody one in that particular part of the world. The fight is going to be between two groups, and you can see it in the handout that I gave you. You're going to have on one side the royalists, and on the other side, you're going to have what is referred to as the Republicans. Now, don't think of like Donald Trump's Republican Party and so forth. Think about more like in the terms of, say, the Spanish Civil War, right? They want democracy, okay? So they're the ones who are going to be revolting, the ones who want to create a republic, as opposed to the people who are in power who have a monarchy. Those are the royalists. You got that? All right? So, on the fight, the fight begins in 1962, where an army commander, whose name is Abdullah as-Salal, a top army commander, overthrows a newly crowned royal leader. And in that particular country, the royal leader is going to be referred to as an imam, I-M-A-M. Let's see if we got, there we go. The Imam Muhammad al-Badr. All right? So, as it turns out, this is an, yes? Abdullah al-Salal? Yes, these are guys. This is a civil war. It's taking place within North Yemen. Okay? And it's actually a little confusing because you've got, this is North Yemen and this is right here. This is like South Yemen. Sorry. Yes? There's a lot of wars that take place during the time period of the Cold War. You can put this one down. You can, in fact, write this down. This is not really a Cold War conflict so much. Because, in fact, you'll see, and I've got it in the slides here, the two countries on the outside that are playing the biggest role, helping their favored side in the Civil War, they're both Arab countries. And in the wars against Israel, Egypt and Saudi Arabia are both opposed to Israel. But in this particular conflict, Saudi Arabia is going to be favoring one, and Egypt's going to favor the other. So it's not really a Cold War. In fact, go ahead and write this down. For the most part, the United States and the Soviet Union stay out of this particular conflict. Okay? To the extent that anybody's going to get some help, it'll be indirect. So like Egypt, which had received weapons and so forth from the Soviet Union, if Egypt helps one side, then I suppose you can say the Soviets indirectly have helped that side. Does that make sense? All right, so we're lining them up. Here we go. Nasser from Egypt, okay, sorry, at least in the initial stages, we got Nasser. By 1970, Nasser is going to be gone. And, yeah, in fact, and you're going to have, yeah, it'll all wrap up by 1970, so about the same time that Nasser dies. So this is before Sadat. So Nasser is going to help support the Republic, al-Salal, the coup d'etat leaders who have taken over, attempting to take over. Okay? What is Mohammed al-Badr, the man who is born to the throne, and he's like, hey, I should be the leader right now, and I just got kicked out of my own country. He escapes to Saudi Arabia. So he just goes a little ways up to the north and says, hey, Saudi Arabia. What kind of government does Saudi Arabia have? Do they have presidents or kings? Is it a republic or a monarchy? Write it down. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. What is Egypt? It's a republic. Yeah. Presidents. If you see president, that usually is a tip-off to some kind of republic. Whether or not it's fully democratic, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's the People's Republic of China. That's not a democracy. That is not a democracy, okay? At least one thing, and here's the irony. It's like, what kind of government does Britain have? They've got a monarch. They've got a constitutional monarchy, which in a sense then, therefore, is a democracy. If they have free elections, it's a democracy whether you got a king there or not. In Saudi Arabia, by the way, do they have democracy? No, they don't. Okay? No. All right. So, there is Imam Muhammad al-Badr. He goes to Saudi Arabia, and he wants support. Okay? And he gets support from Saudi Arabia. Yes? Yes, he's trying to get back on the throne. Very good. And do the Saudis have money? Are you kidding me? Everyone knows the Saudis have money. From what? Really, why is oil important? I wonder. Is oil important for Americans? Why? Gosh, yes, it's important for anybody that has an automobile and so forth. Yeah, oil is very, very important. And so the Saudis are wealthy. They've got a lot of oil. And so they're helping out Mohammed al-Badr. Jordan also is. Write that down. Jordan. And there is some incidental support from the British. Okay? So you'll see that sometimes some of the Cold War allies of ours sometimes will get involved to a degree. The United States generally stays out of it, though. Okay? As it turns out, though, let's see. We're going too far. Nasser provides some critical support, including 20,000 troops from Egypt in the early 1960s, although, Ellie, what event in 1967 will cause Egypt to pull some of its troops out of the conflict in North Yemen and put them into another conflict? What event takes place in 1967 where Egypt is moving their soldiers to get into another conflict? A war with Israel. I'll give you 6 choices as to the name of that war in 1967. What's your first guess? The 6-Day War. Yeah. Yeah, that was the clue. Yes, it's okay. Yep. So here's the deal. Is Egypt able to provide critical support to give a decisive outcome to the North Yemen civil war. No, write that down. That's a key takeaway. Right? Because the Saudis are helping the other side, and so they're like, oh my gosh, this is going on forever. I was like, is that part of the world really super, super peaceful? No, actually, right now, you've got some folks in there that are firing off weapons and missiles at the Saudis, and the Saudis are hitting them back as well. It's a mess. And of course, some of the folks in Yemen have got support from Iran, hence the thing that I was telling you about before. Who do a lot of the Arab countries see as a bigger threat? Israel or Iran? Iran, yeah. Which of those countries is trying to develop nuclear weapons? Iran. Of course, that's a trick. Does Israel have nuclear weapons? Yes, they do. They already do. Yes, they already do. It's a not very well held, well-kept secret. Okay? Eventually, Egypt looks at this. By the time they get to 1970, the expression is, can you explain this, Tara? If they say North Yemen to Egypt is like the Vietnam War to the United States, and that's not a good thing. Translate. What does that mean? So it's not good. Does it look like there's going to be a clear outcome so that the Egyptian soldiers can come home and claim victory? Did the United States, were we able to bring our soldiers home and reasonably claim victory in the Vietnam War? No. But sometimes you get your soldiers involved in a war and you're like, hello, we need this thing to wrap up. Come on, we want a victory, no. So they pull out. Write this down, okay? November 5th, 1967. Al-Salal is removed. The guy behind the coup is removed. He is replaced by other people who, well, I don't know. Are the other people part of this royalist group? That's the interesting question. If Al-Salal is removed from power in 67, does that mean the civil war is over and Muhammad al-Badr wins? No, it doesn't. Because here's what's going to happen. These guys, the ones who created the republic, they figure one of the problems that is causing a lack of resolution is perhaps this man right here. They remove him from power. Others come in. Does that do the trick? Well, within 3 years, going too far. Within 3 years, ultimately, Saudi Arabia, by 1970, write this down, this is the wrap-up. By 1970, Saudi Arabia said, we're done supporting you in your effort to return to the throne, and Saudi Arabia recognizes the existence of a republic in North Yemen. Boom, it's over. If the one country, the main country that's supporting you in an effort to return to the throne, eventually says, we've given it a shot, 10 years, right? 8 years, from 62 to 70, we're not going to support you anymore. That's it. It's over. Sorry, you're done. Saudi Arabia deals with a new reality, which is, on their border, there's a republic, not a king. Oh, well, they're not going to put any more money into the fight at that stage. Got it? That's the North Yemen Civil War. Yes? No. Well, sort of. They didn't want a monarchy. Okay. Kind of, yeah. 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 Okay. All right. There we go. That was a nice little bite-sized conflict. All right? Let's get to another conflict. Yeah, let's get to another conflict. This is going to be kind of crazy. In the video I love, this is going to be referred to in the CNN video. Okay, this is the fight in Angola. All right? This is when Angola goes from being a Portuguese colony in 1975. Good grief, come on, Portugal, give up your colonies already. Portugal was one of the last European imperial powers to let its African possessions go free. Angola will gain its independence in 1975. You see where Angola is here? All right. Is this going to end up being like a conflict that's going to be impacted by the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union and so forth? Turns out, yeah. And it's going to be really curious how it plays out. You ready to get into the conflict in Angola? because there's some lovely little twists and turns and so forth in here. All right. Yep. This would be if you go back to Good Guys, Bad Guys, and you need to go back to the notes, Good Guys, Bad Guys, because I'm going to be telling you some names of some Angolan leaders, and this is cool. Melody gets to play a role in this conflict. It's because she's South African. Yes, because look here. When we get into this, we see Angola, MPLA, Agostino Neto, FNLA, Holden Roberto, UNITA, Jonas Savimbi. Yes. And I'm not going to give you the names of the South, because there's not particular South African leaders, although South Africa is going to play a role in this as well. Okay? Here we go, South Africa. And the United States. Anyway, here we go. So, you ready? Portugal finally lets go of its Angolan colony in 1975. Okay? And as sometimes happens and will happen in Angola, there's a whole bunch of people who are like, ha ha, I want power. 3 different groups. And I love it. You're going to get some interviews on the video from like CIA guys who are going to give you a sense of like what the heck is going on there. And I love how they determine this. Okay? There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? Well, there's the good, the bad. Oh, actually not the ugly, but there's the good, the bad, and then there's the better. Because the good turns out to not be that good because they kind of suck. They're not that good. You're like, this is from the American perspective. Let's start with the bad. All right, you ready? Write this down. From the American perspective, we don't want these guys to take over because then we don't like any country to be under the Soviet sphere. Now, it's not necessarily the most strategic area. I'm saying Angola, so it's further away from the Middle East and so forth. But it does have some strategic resources, and we just don't want to lose that if we hopefully don't have to. So yeah, we'll be putting some resources in there. But write this down. In 1975, there's one United States military resource where like, I don't think we really want to do that because I don't think the American people are really ready to contribute in this way. Troops, exactly. Write that down. We are in the early stages of what is sometimes referred to as the Vietnam syndrome. You know, we don't want to send troops into a conflict that looks like it's going to go on and on and on and on. And trust me, this conflict is going to go on and on and on and on. Okay? So we will send weapons and financial support. Write that down. We will send weapons. So who will we not send weapons to? Right away, MPLA. We are not going to send weapons to those guys. You see on the map here, MPLA, that's kind of the red there. At one particular stage in the war, as this map represents, they are going to be in control. And they're going to do pretty well in this conflict. The MPLA, this is the largest group among the left-wing groups. Left-wing, you got that? Left-wing. Their leader, Agostino Neto. And they will have, assisting them, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union will provide weapons, but they're going to get some really big help from a really critical friend of the Soviet Union. Take a guess. No, not China. Nope. Iran. No. Iran. When we get to Iran, we're going to see that Iran. Let's see, which side of the Cold War are they on? Neither. Oh, okay. Yeah, ultimately, by the end of the Cold War, no. Anyway, we'll get that clue up. Yep, is for the MPLA. Very good. We'll get to that. Just let me do the enemy first. Okay, the so-called bad guy from the perspective of the United States. Well, who is going to really give a lot of critical support to the MPLA? Who is this like, man, it's like they're part of the Soviet group, and they're not forced to be part of the Soviet military like alliance thing, but they're like, man, we hate those Americans. Write it down, Cuba. Did you? Well, I didn't hear you. Sorry. All right, so you were correct. Cuba. So they're going to send over lots of troops. I think ultimately, let me see what we got here. Thousands of Cuban combat troops with understanding of the use of weaponry and artillery, and they're really, really, really going to help the MPLA at various different stages of this fight. Got it? They're going to do quite well. Initially, 400 military instructors, and according to Mr. Castro, who was interviewed as part of this is always this sort of like OPVL thing. He says they did not. They did this without the permission of the Soviet Union. That they just, they were like a rogue. And I still scratch my head and go, I wonder how accurate that is. Because it ultimately, did it help the Soviet Union to have the Cubans in there fighting on behalf of a pro-left group? Yeah, I think so. So, I don't know. I appreciate in these videos that we got Castro being interviewed personally, but I always take it with a little bit of a grain of salt when he says, yeah, we were doing our own thing, the Soviets, you know. I imagine there was a little bit, because the Cubans really did want to. So I imagine there's some interesting conversations between Cuban leadership and the Soviet leadership as far as like their various different tactics and how they're going to actually carry out. Because the Cubans are like, let's go do it, man, let's do this, okay? Right? All right, so the MPLA let's get the good. The first good, it's not going to take too long. FNLA, all right? And actually, this map doesn't even show them on there because they're not going to last very long. Write this down. The FNLA, under the leadership of Holden Roberto, is not going to last very long, okay? I think one of the CIA officers describes Holden Roberto and his group up there as being sort of like country club cowboys or something like that. Anyway, some derisive term. Basically to say they're taking a bunch of U.S. money, they're making all kinds of promises, but when it comes to really delivering in a war, they can't do it. And so we're not going to see the FNLA actually make much of an impact in this war. This war is basically going to be boiled down to a fight between the MPLA and their Cuban assistants, and, you ready? Here's the next one, UNITA. And you can see it up there on the board. They're going to have, most of their strength is going to be in the southern part of Angola. And if you went south from Angola, you would be in a country today known as Namibia. And once upon a time, it was called Southwest Africa, which gives you a real clue as to who had a lot of control and influence over Southwest Africa. It's South Africa. Yes. Yes, they're acronyms. I'm not going to require you to know the actual acronyms in this situation. You're welcome, okay? You do need to know that UNITA, we ultimately are going to give support to UNITA. Their leader is Jonas Savimbi, okay? And we will give support to them. We look at the FNLA and we're like, man, you guys are lame. UNITA, okay, we can give them support. But you know what it really looks like they need? It looks like they really need some really effective combat-trained troops. And where? The United States isn't going to send them over there. Is there a friend of the United States that is having some issues with their profile in the United States because they have, at that time, a policy in their country whereby the majority population of black Africans, do not have the same level of rights as the white population? That would be South Africa. Write that down. South Africa had, at that time, and up until, I want to say, early 90s, when there was an agreement made, and they're like, hey, everybody can vote, and we'll let Nelson Mandela out of prison, and he gets elected as president, and it's like, no more apartheid. Apartheid, think of that as like South African version of segregation. Okay? Did you? Okay, you guys learned about that. So, apartheid was not really helping the South African image on the global scene. They didn't have too many friends. The United States was a friend because, hey, it's the Cold War, and in South Africa, if you're on our side, we'll overlook some of those things that, cause us some difficulties and so forth. Second-class citizenship for darker citizens of your country. So, South Africa is like, sure, we'll do this. And they send in military support and help for the UNITA to go against MPLA. You got that? So we'll have South Africa sending over troops. So what does the United States send over? Weapons, money, but not soldiers. Who gets into the fight? South Africa and the UNITA forces versus the MPLA and the Cubans. You got it? You got that lined up? And what's going to happen? Well, there's going to be some serious, serious battles that are going to be taking place. And the South African troops and UNITA are going to find that the MPLA is actually pretty tough. Okay? It's going to be pretty tough. An attempt by the South Africans and UNITA to overtake the capital city of Luanda Luanda is the name of the capital city. Not Uganda. That is a country. Luanda is the name of the capital city of Angola. And it's going to go, the war's not going to be over until 2002. Write that down. The war's going to be over in 2002. This is a civil war taking place. It started in 1975, and it's going to go on in various different phases until 2002. It's going to be devastating. By the time you get to that stage, the Cubans are out of there, okay, for the most part. South Africa is out of there, okay. The CIA and the United States have stopped funding. And who's ultimately going to win after 500,000 people are dead? Including Savimbi, the UNITA leader. MPLA is going to win. MPLA. 500,000. Let me see if I can find that. Because I think their flag, help me out. Where's Angola? Angola. Where are you? I know it's right here. I'm looking in the African section. I tried to put them like close to, there's South Africa. Where? That was the one I'm looking for. Take a look at this flag, because this is instructive. If that's the flag of Angola today, what does that tell you about the outcome of the war? Red, black, yellow star, machete. Ooh, and I don't know, that looks like a gear or something, some kind of a gear. It looks like the hammer and sickle. So the left wing won in Angola. Okay, you got that? We're done. Yay, okay. Sorry to keep you over a little bit. Okay.